Hey everyone, how you doing today? All right, figured I would do a update. You see these videos coming through, every day, kind of explaining what's going on in Gaza and the people, you know, trying to exit there from the north to southern Gaza. So this is one of the unfortunate videos. Let's take a look at it.
One of countless ambulance calls overnight in Gaza. This is Jabalia.
Look at that, absolute destruction. Nothing but rubble on the ground, just dust in the air. They must have had an attack recently, like a missile attack, because you can hardly see through the air. All you can see is that particulate matter. Imagine if you're sitting there breathing that in. Whatever chemicals they put into those bombs, it's not designed to be good for you, right? It's not designed to help you out. So just imagine the smells of the bodies, and the decay, and the dust, and all the chemicals that come out of those bombs. It's just awful. But this is what we're capable of. So, as unfortunate as it is to have to watch it, I mean, you can't, and it wouldn't be good for you to pretend that it doesn't happen. You need to understand exactly where we are and what's going on and what evil looks like. So, as hard as it is to look at, we need to see it. Otherwise, you're going to live in a whitewashed world. The only thing you're going to see is what looks good, right? Happy people on beaches, people buying brand new luxurious cars and living in multi-million-dollar homes, and you're going to see that Instagram life, right? That fake life, that airbrushed life, and you're going to think this place is amazing. And for a few people, they might think that, but for lots of people here, and even then, that's only now. That's just in your small 80-year life, if you're lucky enough to make it 80 years. That's not your eternity, right? So you don't want to see a fake version of this place. You want to see the real version to understand how far we've missed the mark and how far we have to go. So let's take a look at it. Oh, wow. Okay, so those were emergency personnel sitting there walking around, and I guess they're filming this, and they just got hit with a bomb. It's an ambulance there. Right. So those are probably firefighters, EMT, physician, things like that. They're sitting there working. They're trying to help out people that have already been bombed by Israel. Right? These don't strike me as terrorists. These are firemen, ambulance workers, EMT, things like that. They're emergency care professionals. They're trying to help people that have been blown up by another country, by Israel, by a country. So they're doing their job. They're out there trying to help people. And then you have the military, or however they shot these artillery, sitting there just mashing buttons, destroying people, right? They look over, look at their screen, their displays, they mash a couple of buttons, and then people get blown to pieces. People get maimed, they get burned, right? Burns they're going to have to look at for the rest of their life. Their limbs get blown off. They're sitting there in puddles of their own blood. All while someone's sitting behind a little screen, either in an aircraft or artillery unit, whatever it is, a tank, just mashing buttons, destroying God's creations. All it takes is a little button press. That's it. Tiny little button press, and you have destroyed the body that God gave us, because you don't value people. You don't value human beings. You treat human beings like human beings treat animals, right? You sit around, I don't want to get off on a tangent or anything. We'll have to deal with that too. But what you're seeing is what happens when human beings treat other human beings like animals. Now imagine being the animals, because no one's talking about them. No one's crying for them, right? They're being slaughtered every single day. Every single day around the world, animals of all shapes and sizes and varieties are murdered for your taste buds, because you like the taste of eating flesh. As disgusting as that sounds, that's what happens here. That's the culture in this place, right? That's obviously not the culture in heaven. Things are very different. It's nothing like this place. But why would it be? Because we're here. All right? So what you're seeing, these atrocities you're seeing, are essentially, and I've even heard it on the press, like you'll hear people in the press and they're like, oh, these people are animals, they're terrible. Well, guess what? The animals act a lot better than we do. The animals live in harmony with the environment. Animals, some of them have to kill other animals, and there are reasons for that. And we've gone through that. But what you're seeing here is what happens when humans, when we, right, treat each other like we today treat animals. We may pay the hitman to do it. We may pay someone else to raise them, right? And then kill them so we can have our hamburgers and steaks or chicken or whatever, right? Whatever we want to have. But you're paying the hitman. It would be like you paying someone just to press the button, right? To blow people away, to kill them. The only difference would be, right, in that analogy, it would be, let's say, the humans are killing the humans, right? The only difference would be, because you're treating them like animals, the only difference is they're not eating them. So as bad as this story is, it could be worse, because then the Israelis could be coming in and eating these people. And then it would really be a good analogy, right, between humans and animals, a good comparison. But I don't want to get off on an aside. We'll have to deal with that one too. But let's just continue on. Emergency personnel out here trying to help people. And you have Israeli soldiers, either in planes or artillery units, however they're doing it, bombing them to death because they're upset and they want revenge. Or they've decided to take orders from a maniac who has decided that killing civilians is okay, right? Who doesn't care about those commandments over there, that guess what? I think those were given to Jewish people a long time ago. If I had to guess, I would say, sorry. I would say the Jewish people know about those commandments back there. If I had to guess. Because I think that's in the Old Testament. Sorry. I'm quite certain those commandments back there, I think those are in the Torah. I think they're in there. But what happened, which if you read the Old Testament, I'm getting through it, I'm almost done now. If you go read the Old Testament, there's something funny in there, which I don't recommend it. It's horrible. It's atrocious. It's basically what you're seeing right here. This is what you're going to find in the Old Testament. So kind of odd that it's in the same region. But this is the kind of heinous activity you'll see in the Old Testament. People running around and slaughtering people as if they don't care, as if they don't value life, right? And they sit around and they slaughter people because they don't follow these commandments back here, right? The one against killing and murder, right? They don't follow that one, especially. And what you'll find in the Old Testament is there's a recurring theme. It's the Jewish people, you know, they get the commandments from God, and then what happens is they don't follow them, right? They don't follow them. They do whatever they want. They go back to worshiping false idols. They go back into pagan worship. You know, they're greedy, right? In the Old Testament, if you go back and look at it, they're taking war spoils, they're killing people, they're taking them, they got false idol worship, you've got the calves. So they continually, it's like a recurring pattern. It's very strange. They get the commandments, they have the, right, their covenant with God, and then they break it, right? They go their own way, they do whatever they want, and then they go through a very troubling time, and then eventually, when they're on their knees, they beg God for help, and then forgiveness is given. But it's a strange pattern. If you go through the Old Testament, like I said, I don't recommend it. It's awful. It's like watching this, but in paperback. But that's kind of the thing, right? They have a covenant with God. They break the covenant. They go their own way. You know, tragedy befalls them. And then eventually they're brought back to God through basically, you know, on their knees. They go back to God and they pray to God and they get forgiven. But it's just like this. It's just what you're seeing here. And this is because as much as they claim to love the Torah, they've forgotten that part in there about not killing people. I think they missed that one. So they don't have any problems murdering people. So they're not living in their covenant with God, right? That I'm quite certain is in their Torah. If they would go read it, they might find it. But But just in case they haven't, God is not okay with you murdering people, especially men, women, and children, innocent people. So they might want to bust out that religious material and go through it again. But you're not allowed to murder people, right? And the people that need to hear that are the people pressing the buttons, hitting the keys, right? Hitting the little keyboard, however they're doing it in their weapon system. Whoever's sending all these bombs and missiles over here, right? You may want to go ahead and read your Torah again. And you may want to go read those 10 Commandments, because I don't think you understand them. I really don't. So don't claim to be a religious nation when you're sitting here bombing men, women, and children. And it's on video, right? If we didn't have video and you could just get away with this and people didn't know, and maybe they see an article buried in a newspaper like a month later, you could get away with it. But nowadays, everyone sees everything. Everyone's got a cell phone, right? They can take video out there. They can take their cell phones out. They got, little personal cameras, things like that. You can't get away with this stuff anymore. So Israel's forever going to be stained, at least as long as people's memory is, with this act, right? You can't sit back and claim to be a religious nation in a covenant with God when you act like this, right? Do you think God wants you to sit here and blow up babies on live TV so the whole world can see it, and blow up firefighters and EMT workers, people trying to help? But guess what? They're being absolutely destroyed, right? By the leadership in Israel, with the Bibi, the Knesset, that whole crew, right? All the way down to the military commanders who are taking the orders and they're agreeing with them, right? They're making a mistake, because what they're doing is they're following the orders of a human being, and they're disregarding the orders from God. And I assure you that when you pass on and your body perishes, which it will eventually, the orders that you accepted from that human who decided to follow orders that went against those 10 commandments and your covenant with God, right? Those human orders are going to do nothing for you. Absolutely nothing. God won't care. Especially because God's going to say, hey, number one, you had information to the contrary that would let you know that you're not allowed to blow people up. Self-defense is one thing. This is not self-defense. I understand that Hamas attacked you. Those were heinous, wicked, nefarious acts. No one's disputing that. But all you've done in your response is shown that you're, number one, in ways you're worse than they are, right? You're literally worse than they are. You've lost any moral high ground you could have had in this situation because of how you responded. Right? You could have gone in there, you could have negotiated for your hostages, you could have, some military action to go get them, right? Because you're dealing with people who are acting in an evil way. These firefighters and these EMT workers and these children and things like that, these innocent civilians, they're not the one that went over there and cut heads off, right? They didn't go over there and shoot anyone. They didn't go over there and take hostages. They're just unlucky enough to be living in this open air prison. I've heard them call it that, right? They're unlucky enough to be in this open air prison in this really tightly confined space, right? You've got them in this super tight confined space, like 2.2, 2.3 million people, whatever it is, in that very small area. And then you're bombing them. So you've got all these humans stuck in this little bowl, right? And they can't get out. They're stuck. They can't go north, right? Can't go north. That's blocked. They can't go south into Egypt. They're not letting them in. So you've got all these people trapped. So you've got some bad folks in there. You've got Hamas, a very nasty organization that decided to commit the atrocities of which Israel is responding, right? So you have that horrible group of people, that political leadership. And you also have probably a certain number of people, within Gaza and the West Bank maybe, that support Hamas and they agree with that activity. So they're all wrong, right? You have the terrorists who went and did those evil acts, of which they will absolutely pay for it. And then you have the people that support them, and they're just as bad because you're supporting a terrorist that would go murder God's creations, not yours, right? God gave us life. God put the breath in our lungs, right? So God can take that. You can't. Right? Someone's coming at you with a knife, right? They're running at you with a knife, they're shooting at you. Can you defend yourself? Sure, because they're most certainly evil people here, right? In this environment, evil is allowed to happen. And look around, a lot of people subscribe to that policy. But don't ever think that you can take the moral high ground as a country when you don't even read those 10 commandments that you were lucky enough to get. And you certainly don't follow them because you're sitting back and you're blowing people up by clicking buttons, just destroying people. EMTs, firefighters, children, men and women that have had nothing to do with that terrorist attack. Taking all history aside, we're not even talking about the history of the two nations, right? Or of Gaza or Palestine, which should be a nation, but it's not. So not even taking that, just literally taking just the terror attack that started it and Israel's response, just to keep it simple. Israel is literally acting worse than the terrorists, or at least they're both terrorists, right? So you have one terrorist group attack another country that then in turn is literally committing terrorist acts, just like the original terrorists that attacked him. There's no good person in this situation. You have a horrible terrorist group, and you have a country acting like a horrible terrorist in their response. That's exactly what's going on, right? Hamas, absolutely horrible. Israel, absolutely horrible. Look at what they're doing. And imagine what we're not seeing. Imagine that there are things so nasty that YouTube won't even let them put it on there. Because trust me, I'm sure people are going to have PTSD just from watching these videos, just from seeing what's going on. Sorry, one second. All right, people are probably going to have PTSD from this whole situation. So let's continue through it. Otherwise, this will run for like 2 hours. I don't want that. So look at this, right? You think these people are all terrorists? All of these, right? Picking up the rubble. Who knows how many people are under there, right?
This is genocide, not war.
Genocide, 100%. Of which Israel has a rich history of genocide. And if you don't believe me, go read the Old Testament, right? They're very fond of the Old Testament, the Torah, right? The Pentateuch, whatever you'd like to call it. Go read it. What you're going to see is a lot of genocide. And apparently, nothing has changed. Israel still doesn't listen to God. And we'll see what happens. But there's a recurring cycle within the Old Testament if you read it. So who knows? We'll see how it plays out. All I know is we're going to have to sit here and watch Israel absolutely destroy innocent civilians in a very tight, confined area where they're packed in like sardines, right? I know. But they're packed in there extremely tightly, and they're bombing them to death. And they can't get out. They can't get out through Egypt. So what are they supposed to do? You're blowing up all their housing. You're just going to have them sitting on the street, right? Sleeping on pillows of rubble. And they don't care. Bibi doesn't care. His military leadership doesn't care. They're just sitting back, mashing buttons and destroying life. That's what they do. At least that's what I'm seeing.
It's an attempt to displace the people of the Gaza Strip.
Right. Because where are they going to have to live? When this is all done and Bibi and his crew is done destroying all these people's homes and blowing up the entire area and essentially wiping Gaza off the map, what's going to happen? They're all going to have to flee. They're all going to be refugees. He wants them to leave probably. He probably figures, hey, I'll blow up all their houses. They have nothing to eat. They have nothing to drink. They have no medicine. They'll be sitting there dying, getting diseases. Right. So Bibi's just creating hell inside Gaza for the Palestinian people. And who knows, maybe he's thinking, hey, when this is all done, whenever I get tired of killing all these people, they'll all just leave. And then we'll have Gaza. And then we can just take over that area too. Because if you go back to this map, you can kind of see there's a strange thing going on here in Palestine. You see this area right here that they had total control of here, like back in 1917? Well, if you notice, as the years go on, something really strange happens. The Jewish population they just come and take it over. It's weird how it happens. There we go. You see the little percentages up here? Whoop. Well, that's a bad one. 48. All right? So right there. So you can see kind of what happens when they go to war is they displace all these people. And that land, you know, once Israel takes control of it, that you think they're ever going to give it back? That's never going to happen. So any land that they get, you're not getting back. Not voluntarily anyway, which is, you know, land disputes. That's what we get into. Right? Now you're in occupied territories. Right? You get smaller and smaller. Areas smaller and smaller. So I guess they're going to have to change this infographic because, you know, maybe 2023, 2024, we'll see. We'll see what's left. You know, we'll see what's left of, you know, the Palestinian people because they're just going to keep blowing them off the map. And maybe, you know, part of the strategy is that things will be so horrible and horrific and the memories will be so awful in Gaza, the biggest open air prison in the world, which is basically the biggest portal to hell right now from the way it looks. If you can imagine living in there, they know that these folks will probably leave. How would you even rebuild? I've heard they have to import like as 80 or 90% of like their products and things like that, construction material and things like that. You know, they have to import a lot. How are they going to do that? How would you even begin to rebuild? They're blowing the entire city off the map. Over 6,000 bombs of various sizes and penetrators, non-penetrators, maybe some white phosphorus thrown in there. Hey! All sorts of ammunitions, right? They're destroying. You know how long it takes to rebuild that kind of stuff? The amount of materials you need, the amount of workers you would need. And you would need equipment that's not in pieces from being blown up by bombs. So they're setting up a situation which basically is going to mean that all these Palestinians will just have to flee and go somewhere else. Which, who knows, maybe that's the game plan. And then once they're gone, you can just annex the land and take it for yourself and never give it back. I'm not sure if that's the policy. The only thing I know for sure is that they want to kill them all. That's the way it looks. How else can you see it when you're taking a very small area with people just packed in there and you're dropping bombs? 6,000, 8, who knows, probably 8,000 by now. Thousands of bombs just blowing up everything. Absolute destruction. Devoting to destruction. Right? Nothing changes. It's the same old story. And I'll never read the Old Testament again once I get through it because it's nothing but this. It's just death and war spoils and taking land. That's all it is. Right? And vengeance and wrath. Right? And not following God's commandments. Doing what you want. Going your own way. Missing the mark. That's exactly what they're doing. And nothing has changed. Thou shalt not murder? Yeah? How's that going? How's that working? You're not supposed to have vengeance. You're not supposed to be wrathful. And that's exactly what's happening. So we'll take a look at this video. All right.
This will not happen.
Tens of thousands are fleeing from north to south Gaza before the land invasion Israel threatens. But that's a long way from the 1.1 million who live here. Safad.
Right. And just to show you like some of the differences technologically, you have Israel flying, who knows what they got, F-35s, right, F-16s, I don't know what other complaints. They have that kind of material, you know, that kind of equipment. Tanks, very upgraded tanks. They have very updated, very techy war weapons, right? Israel is built for war. It's something they're very keen on. They're very good at upgrading their offensive and defensive weapon systems. Israel is about war. And granted, that's because they have to deal with a lot of Muslim countries that want to hurt them because, you know, historically religious things that have happened there, and also the fact that they're seen as an occupying force that comes in and takes over territory, which from recent history, you can see why they might think that, right? Started off like this used to be Palestine, and now there's almost nothing left. And after this, she'll probably even have less. So you can understand at least recent history, not to mention really historical things back from biblical times, right? Where they claimed that God told them, this is your promised land, right? This is your promised land. You really think God's going to say, hey, I want you to go into this land, even though they're pagans, right? Even though they're doing horrible sexual things with each other and sacrificing children and all that other nonsense. Even then, God would not say, this is your promised land, so I want you to go wipe everyone out. All those creations, right? All those things I created, all those humans I created, I want you to go murder them all. And I want you to take all their stuff and their women and whatever you want, right? Just run all over them. Go into their towns, kill them all. If you see any young virgin girls, go ahead and take those for yourself as war spoils. Take any gold, precious stones, whatever else you want. Take whatever you want. Take the animals, take whatever you want, and then burn the place down. Do you really think God would give you a command like that? Or green light you to genocide people? That would never happen. But just look at the technological differences here. This is not a war. This is an extermination. They've got horse-drawn carriages. We'll leave the animal issues aside. But this is the difference you're talking about. They've got F-35s, F-16s, very updated equipment. This is what they're fighting against. The Palestinians have, what? Maybe some like grenades, things like that, shoulder-fired rockets, small arms, things like that. They don't have any tanks that I know of. They don't have an air force. They got a couple of hang gliders. I don't even know if those still work anymore. This is not a war. It's an extermination. And that attack, all it did was give Bibi justification to wipe these people off the map. Which from some of the news videos that I've seen is exactly the intention. Basically, Bibi, who knows, right? Who knows how it all happened? All I'm saying is that that attack gave them all the justification they needed to devote all the Palestinians to destruction. And this is the technological difference you're looking at. So people will say this is a war between Hamas and Israel. It's not a war. That's a genocide. It's absolute destruction. Technologically, there's no comparison. Absolutely none. So if they had to go in there with some boots on the ground, honestly, just negotiate with him. But, you know, at this point, Hamas knows how Israel acts, right? Look at how they're responding. Do you think there's any way these two can ever get together at a negotiating table when you've just bombed the entire civilization of Gaza? You've just blown everybody up. All their infrastructure, hospitals, schools, they don't care. If any rocket came in from there, they'll just destroy it. So is there any way these two can ever meet at a negotiating table? Very difficult. That's what should happen, but how is it going to happen when you're just bombing them every day? And now you're squeezing them into southern Gaza, right? Where they can't even get out the Egyptian border. This is a genocide. It's not a war. I know they call it the war between Israel and Hamas. This is not a war. Look at the difference. Look at the difference.
This for us. She and her 3 children.
Right. Now compare that to those very sophisticated tanks and artillery units sitting outside the border trying to get into Gaza. Right? Compare that to this.
Out. And like so many, they have a car and fuel. World Health Organization says the forced displacement by Israel of seriously ill and injured people.
Right? Are all these people terrorists? These people look like they want to go cut any heads off? No. It looks like emergency personnel. All the news, all they want to tell you about is how these horrible terrorists came into Israel and did these horrible acts, and they did. And they own it. That sin is attached to their soul. Right? It's attached. And the only person that can get that sin off is God. And that's going to have to be through repentance, through saying they're sorry. And then by working probably the rest of their life doing good deeds to try and offset it as best they can. And that's between them and God. But the system is designed in such a way that for good actions, you get good benefits, good consequences. And for bad acts, you have bad consequences. If you think you're getting into heaven by acting like an absolute savage, it's never going to happen. Never. The road is actually very narrow. I know they say the road is narrow, but I don't think people actually understand how narrow that road is. which is why there are lots of off-ramps, right, for the C students, and there are methods to try again. But you're not getting in by acting like someone who lives here, right? You need to act as if you belong in heaven, or you'll never get there. And acting like this, acting like humans act today, is not good enough. Neither for Hamas the terrorist or Israel, the terrorist nation, from the way they're responding. That's the only way you can look at it. That's it. So let's watch these emergency personnel here.
Is, quote, a death sentence. Recognising that, perhaps Israel said it left 2 roads open to the south.
Look at this. You tell me those are all terrorists? No. All the shops are being blown up, all the houses, schools. How are these people ever supposed to get back to normal life? How are they supposed to get back into school? How are they supposed to eat? How are they supposed to drink? Is the expectation you just keep them pinned in here until they die? What other choice do they have? You won't let them out. You evacuated northern Gaza so you can just blow it all up and turn it into rubble. So where are those people supposed to sleep? What kind of roof are they supposed to have over their head? It's already one of the most densely populated cities in the world, or areas, right? It already is. And that's before you destroyed all the buildings with your 6,000 bombs or however many bombs. So what are these people supposed to do? How are they supposed to live? What kind of life are they supposed to have? What are they supposed to do? You won't let them out. It's an open air prison, and you're okay with the terrorist nation bombing them to death day after day and starving them and giving them no water and no medical help. I think we'll even see it. There's like trucks of aid trying to get in there and they won't let them in. Probably because they don't want them getting blown up. Because Israelis are just sitting back, mashing buttons and just watching people get blown to pieces.
But just yesterday, Gazan officials say an Israeli strike hit a convoy of fleeing civilians, killing 70 people.
Israeli strike killing 70 civilians. They were trying to flee. Fleeing civilians. Let me make sure I had that right.
But just yesterday, Gazan officials say an Israeli strike hit a convoy of fleeing civilians, killing 70 people.
Right? 70 people. And all it took was one nation that was willing to kill people and violate the 10 Commandments, and one pilot who accepted the orders and did this. That's it. That's all it takes to kill 70 people. Not sure if you can hear that. One button click. One of those or one of these. Huh? That. And 70 lives just got blown up. Not to mention however many people might have been next to that convoy who got damaged, who will have to go to a hospital somewhere, one that's not blown up in Gaza. But that's all it takes. One leader of a country willing to kill people because of their pride and their bloodlust, right? They're full of wrath. They want to get even. They want to protect their political position, their job, their cushy job, right? Running a country, all kinds of benefits and people waiting on you hand and foot, puffs your pride up, makes you feel good. They want to protect that. They want to stay in power, right? That's why they have those jobs. Do you really think those people, a lot of these leaders, do you really think that they're in that position because they want to serve you? Are you kidding me? Trust me, I watch a good bit of news. I'm not sure how many of those folks got into that position to help people, to serve, right? You're supposed to be serving your public. Do any of your political leaders, look at them. Watch how they live their lives. Watch how they answer questions or avoid questions, things like that. Do you really think those people are there to serve you? Right? They usually treat you like peasants. They consider themselves the upper class, right? They're the really smart, the intelligent people with all the connections. They know the right people. We're just the stupid peasants that they watch over. And they'll give us little breadcrumbs and things like that to keep us happy. And they'll feed us not so true stories and information. They'll feed us things like that, bad information, just to keep us happy and placate us. But at the end of the day, a lot of our leadership, people that run this world currently, right, are like they're the kings and queens, right? They're like the kings and queens, and we're just the stupid peasants that they take care of. And they give us a few breadcrumbs whenever they feel like it. But this situation is because you have a king over in Israel who doesn't care about human life. And he ordered, because of his wrath and his vengeance, his need for revenge, he ordered all of the military of Israel who are going to say, oh, well, I'm just following orders. Well, guess what? Your orders come from God. They don't come from your human leader that you decided to follow voluntarily. So whatever sins you commit because of orders that you're taking from your human boss mean nothing compared to the orders you get from God, which are the commandments that God gives to us. Some of those being right over there, the 10 Commandments, which I would think that Jewish people would understand by now, since they're very devout, right? They've got a covenant with God. They're the chosen people, at least as it's said in the Old Testament, even though very often from the material, they don't listen. They get these they have a covenant with God, just like everyone does. There's no chosen people, but they have a relationship with God. They get the 10 Commandments, of which they don't follow. One of the most important, thou shalt not kill. And here they are, killing thousands of people. And if you ask the people of Israel, I'm sure a large portion of them, because their pride is hurt and they're upset and they're angry, right? They're full of wrath right now towards Hamas. So I'm sure if you did a poll in Israel, a lot of them would agree with what's going on. I don't know what those numbers are, and I don't know how accurate the polls are, but I would guess that because of what happened and the images they're seeing of what the Hamas terrorists did, a certain portion of the Israeli population would be okay with what's going on in Gaza. And they see the videos. They know innocent people are getting killed. And you know what they'd say is, well, that's just what happens. That's just what happens in war. You have collateral damage. People get killed, right? So what? So what? Well, God's already told you, you can't murder people. You're killing innocent people. So what you're saying by going to war, and this goes for any country, not just Israel, any country where you go in and you decide that you're going to bomb a location and there's any amount of acceptable collateral damage, what you're saying to God is that I don't care what you think. I know that you tell me that I can't murder people, but I really don't care because I'm angry and I want to get at these few people. And granted, there's a few civilians, just a few, maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 in the whole war. Who knows? There's the innocent people that unfortunately are going to have to die. They're only going to have to die because you don't listen, because you don't value human life. God has been very clear that we cannot murder, but especially in the military apparatus, and that goes up to the country leadership, the way they think is that I don't care what God thinks. All I want to do is I want to go get these bad folks, these people that I don't like for whatever reason, and I want to blow them up or shoot them or burn them or whatever. But there's going to be some innocent people getting killed, and you accept that because you live here, right? We live in this place, and it's not a great place. It is absolutely filled to the brim with sin, which is why we're here. And we live like this place. It's fixable. It can be fixed. It's possible. But it would require people to live in accordance with God's wishes. And we're not. Because as a society, as a people, We're okay with killing each other. It's acceptable. It's called collateral damage, at least in a war setting. It's acceptable. You're like, oh, well, we had like 10 or 20 kids get blown up, but, we got the bad person we were after. It's acceptable here because you're willing to kill each other, and you do it every day. Countries do it. People do it. We don't follow God's commandments. We don't listen. Right? And the wage of sin is death. These bodies perish. Right? Because we're full of sin and we sin most of our lives, we die. And as long as you're a sinner, you're not going to have an eternal life. You will be here. Right? If you want to go home, if you want to make it to the promised land, it's a very narrow path. And you have to live in accordance with God's wishes. And we don't do that, which is apparent by atrocities like this. Let me get through to this. This will go to
The US and Qatar are attempting to open the Rafah crossing in South Gaza into Egypt, but Egypt won't accept a mass influx of refugees. And
how are you not going to have a mass influx of refugees? Look what's happening. They've been told to evacuate south. Israel's bombing them out of existence. So how can Egypt say that they can't accept a mass number of people?
Oh, they wait.
The Egyptian government is using this issue to try to pressure the Israelis through the Americans, if not directly, and lobbying the international community for humanitarian aid and for support in creating a humanitarian corridor.
Yeah.
Even if it opens.
Exactly. You need a humanitarian corridor to get these folks out of here. And you need a game plan, or you're going to need all kinds of aid. And guess what? Israel's creating this entire problem. Yes, Hamas, a terrorist organization based on what they just did. I'll only base it on just that one act. That's all I need to know. I've seen that they'll go in and cut heads off and kill innocent people and take hostages. That's a terrorist organization. So they created this, right? Initially, the first action. But the refugee crisis, that is 100% on Israel. Hamas couldn't have created this refugee crisis without Israel in their vengeance, blocking them all in, and then bombing them out of existence, just destroying them. So everyone's going to have to flee. So you wouldn't have a refugee crisis without the response from Israel. Israel could have negotiated. They could have gone in there, maybe like a small team, to go find these folks after negotiating, seeing what they could figure out. And that wouldn't have created a refugee crisis. Bombing Gaza out of existence and destroying everyone, that's going to create a refugee crisis. They have nowhere to live. You've destroyed their homes, their buildings, their schools, religious institutions, everything. You've bombed it all, and you're continuing to bomb it. Who knows when you'll stop? Probably not until you're out of ammunition. But thankfully, the United States will give you plenty more, and other countries will too. So, lots of blame to go around.
Rafah looks like an escape route only for foreign passport holders.
Every place I go to run away, and I just find bombs and I find dead people, and like maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
If you live in Gaza, that's possible. It's awful. Does she look like a terrorist to you? Does she strike you as a terrorist?
Waiting too on the other side, trucks full of desperately needed aid.
And they can't even get in.
Heading north for Gaza. Clinics and hospitals across the Gaza Strip now brought to the edge of being overwhelmed. We got through to the British doctor, Dr. Qassem Abu Sita, at the main Al-Shifa hospital.
Unless there is respite, there is going to be an infectious diseases public health catastrophe in the hospital.
Oh.
The bodies are stacked up.
Yeah.
People are too afraid to bury their dead.
Oh.
You drive past one of the destroyed buildings.
Look what they've done.
The stench of decaying bodies is very, very, very prominent. It seems that they no longer are capable.
If you want to see what the worst pit of hell looks like, get on a plane and go to Gaza. Somehow get there and get in. And that's probably the worst pit of hell that we have right here on Earth. One of. Lots of bad places, but currently, this is probably one of the worst. All the dead body, the stench. He even said, like, they're scared to bury people, maybe fear of buildings coming down, fear of getting bombed. That stench is not going to go away for a while, especially when Israel continues to murder people every single day. And infectious diseases, I hadn't even thought about that. So all these bodies lying around, yeah, I guess you will have diseases running rampant. And guess what? How are you going to get all the medical supplies in there and antibiotics and things like that to deal with it? You can't. These people are just going to be slowly slaughtered. Some of them quickly. Some will have a bomb dropped on their forehead. The other ones will be killed slowly and starved to death.
Able to take out the bodies.
Which is kind of odd, you know? People that went through the horror of the Holocaust, you would think that they would be able to look at another group of people being treated like that and feel sorry for them and have compassion and empathy, but they don't. Not all of them. Because they're angry and they want vengeance. But, I mean, how worse are the conditions here between these people? No place to live, no food, no water, getting blown up every day, infectious diseases are going to be off the charts. You would think that a group that has gone through the Holocaust would be able to have empathy for other people under similar conditions. But I'm not seeing that.
Gazan authorities say around 2,500 people killed, more than 700 of them children.
700 children.
At least 9,000 injured.
So all of the Israeli pilots and artillery commanders, whatever they call them, the people sitting around pushing buttons, I hope you're happy and I hope you sleep well at night. But just understand that you're responsible for every little button mash of yours. Every trigger pull, every button mash, that's on you.
But Gaza is not the only front. Nearly 60 people have been killed this week in the West Bank, and today Hezbollah and Israeli forces exchanged rocket and artillery.
Right. There's the difference in technology. Look at those tanks there, those weapons, those very sophisticated weapon systems, and compare those to some of the carts, they saw the donkey carts and things getting evacuated out of Gaza, northern Gaza. That's the technological difference you're looking at. So don't call this war. This is an extermination. That's what it is. This is not going to be a war. They could roll in there and probably kill everyone if they wanted to in maybe 2 days. Look at all this artillery. Do not call this a war. This is vengeance. This is wrath. And this is a country getting even. And this is people following orders, mashing buttons, and violating God's commandments every single day. Just destroying people.
Artillery fire across Israel's northern frontier with Lebanon. But it is Gaza awaiting invasion. Prime Minister Netanyahu, widely blamed by Israelis for allowing Hamas to invade, now steeling his troops for war. Are you ready?
And it doesn't matter whose orders you're following. Right? God is the God of the universe. Everything. God's laws supersede any laws you have. Federal, state, local, doesn't matter. It's top down, right? There's a triangle. It's a triangle. And God is all the way at the top. So God's laws are much, much higher than your human leader's laws. And at the end of the day, any orders you get from Bibi or any military commander under him are irrelevant. The only laws that are going to help you after you're dead and your soul comes out of your body are the laws that God gave you. The ones that you choose or chose not to follow.
What's coming? He asked them repeatedly. With 250,000 reservists called up, Israeli tanks, artillery and infantry assembled close to the border for their latest invasion in a series since Hamas took power in Gaza 16 years ago.
16 years they've been in the open air prison, as best I can tell. I'm not a political expert on Gaza. I'm getting up to speed. But 16 years they've been in control of Gaza, treated like peasants.
Alex reporting there. We were hoping to speak to an Israeli government spokesman, but he's just had to run away from his studio position to get into an air raid shelter because of alarms. Let's go then now to Sikander Kamani, our foreign affairs correspondent who joins us live from Ashdod, just north of Israel's border with Gaza. And Sikander, you've also had alarms, apparently.
Yes, that's right. More rockets fired over today. Just around half an hour ago was the latest barrage. But we also saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as we saw in Alex's report there, visiting southern Israel for the first time. And he's been heavily criticized for not having met with families, for not having attended funerals. Lots of people here blame him personally, and certainly his government, for not having done more to prevent this awful massacre.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So he basically caused the massacre by not being prepared enough and not having the defenses up to par to let the massacre happen. And then because of the massacre, he decides to defile the entire country by the response that he's authorized to genocide a group of people in front of the entire world. Right? Israel looks no better than Russia at this point. They're murdering innocent people. They're just sitting around murdering, mashing buttons, and destroying life every single day. I don't see how, right, Bibi is any better than Putin at this point. Just judging from this war that's been going on. Look at how many people they've managed to kill in a week. You know? How many people are they going to slaughter in the next month or 6 months, however long this goes on? So, unfortunately, you always judge people from the top down, right? So, as far as Israel goes, Bibi's in control, him and the Knesset. So, somehow, some way, under his leadership, they had one of the worst attacks they've ever had in Israel. And then based on his vengeance, he's defiling the entire country from this response. And now the entire world is going to see how Israel doesn't follow God's commandments, which has happened for thousands of years. And they're okay with genociding people, which is apparent if you take the time to read the Old Testament, which I don't recommend. Just go right in with the New Testament. It's called Christianity for a reason, right? Start with Christ. But if you want a summary of what the Old Testament's like, just keep watching this. This is what happens in the Old Testament. They devote people to destruction. They genocide people. They take the land over. And that's what you're seeing. And the entire world is going to see this happen. The entire world is seeing what Israel is capable of with their military might and their lack of concern for human life. Their ability to look at human life and in their anger, blow it off the map. And all it takes is a couple of clicks.
We've also been hearing from a senior security official who admitted that the assessment that Hamas was deterred and weakened by previous bouts of clashes with the Israelis was wrong. The conventional wisdom had been that Hamas was primarily interested in improving the economic situation of people in Gaza. Instead, we know they were planning and plotting this awful attack. That same security official also said that just a few hours before the attack began last Saturday, the head of Israel's domestic intelligence service, the Shin Bet, was called in at 4 a.m. for an unscheduled briefing, but although new intelligence was coming in, it didn't warrant mobilization, he said.
And is there any more information, Sikander, about when this offensive from land, sea and air might start?
Well, the Israeli military are not...
Okay, so there's apparently going to be an offensive. I knew they asked northern Gaza to clear out. They gave them like 24 hours, which it looks like it might have gone a little bit longer, thankfully, to give them a little more time. But I guess they're going to have a new campaign of land, sea, and air, right? Almost like Hamas did to them initially with the terrorist attack. So, I guess the murder's just getting ramped up. They're just getting started, right? This is just softening them up. The 700 kids they killed or whatever it is, right? That's just softening them up. So they're about to come in with a huge campaign and lay the entire place to waste and just destroy the entire place. So I don't see how any Palestinians would be able to stay in Gaza. I don't know that there'll be anything left standing once they're done. What's going to be left standing? How will the economy be able to even move after this is done? How long would it take to rebuild all these buildings? Where's the material going to come from? Who will be there to rebuild it? People that can get out of Gaza, right? Maybe your construction workers, things like that, people you're going to really need. Maybe they'll just leave because there'll be nothing left, just a pile of rubble and dead bodies.
To operational details, it does appear from what some officials have been saying that the deadline for evacuation from the north of Gaza to the south of Gaza has been somewhat extended. The Israeli military saying, as you pointed out, Matt, that they've drawn up plans for this offensive from land, air and sea. Also getting more insight into what the aims of this operation might be, with officials here saying that
the aims, it's quite clear. They want to destroy people. They want to kill people. That's the aim of the operation. That's what happens when you blow off a bomb next to someone's head. When you blow up a building and you collapse it in on people that are sleeping and people that are under it and people that live there, the goal is to kill people. What else would you use a bomb for? Right? You're not using bombs, penetrating bombs, to deliver groceries or aid. You send them down to kill people. That's how it works.
Will no longer be in power over Gaza by the end of it. What comes next? Who comes next in power? That's a big question. I mean, reoccupying the Gaza Strip would be very challenging in the long term for Israel, to say the least. The Palestinian Authority...
Well, it'll just be a pile of rubble, so it wouldn't be that difficult. And I don't know that anybody will be able to live there. We'll have to see how long this goes on and what this campaign brings. But it'll be pretty easy to take it over if everyone's dead. And all you're doing is running your tank over dead bodies. It wouldn't be that difficult. If you make it the situation there so horrific that no human being could possibly stay there, it'll be very easy to take it over because everyone will be gone. Diseases will have got them. Malnutrition will have got them. They will have gotten blown to pieces. They will have been so terrified they had to leave because the PTSD won't let them sleep. It's very easy to take over land when you're willing to kill everyone that's on that land.
Charge of the West Bank, they're already deeply unpopular.
Sikander, thanks very much indeed. Well, with me now here is from the Charity Action Aid is Gemma Kosyals-Gulian. Thank you very much indeed. I hope I didn't mangle your name too much. Thanks for coming to our position. What are you hearing from your people inside the Gaza Strip?
Well, when we managed to have contact with them, what we are hearing is that they are desperate. They don't know what to do. They say that they are dying slowly. Yeah. So it's really worrying.
Dying slowly?
Yeah, that's what they are.
And have they evacuated?
The ones that aren't getting blown up?
4 of them, they have evacuated towards the north, but one of them is staying. Right. Towards the south, sorry. And one of them is staying in the north.
And why is he or she staying in the north?
Because he has a big family, he has not the same capability to move. Means of transportation were scarcing. So it's not the same for everyone. Like the most vulnerable people, they have no means. Like for example, people with disabilities, women, pregnant women, elderly, or
there's something like 35,000 women in the Gaza Strip apparently who will give birth at some stage in the next few months. That's a big number.
Yeah.
And you're concerned about them, obviously.
Of course.
Can you imagine giving birth in that hellish environment? As bad as it already was, and now it's blown to pieces and dead bodies and stench everywhere. Can you imagine giving birth in that environment? It's supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life, but you're dealing with that. And as you're giving birth, you're listening to Israeli planes fly over and bomb the place to rubble. Elderly people, people that can't evacuate, people with low income. This is a human travesty. And we're watching it unfold real time, day after day. And all this time, Israel could stop this anytime they wanted. All they have to do is give the order just to stop the attack. Literally stop the attack. I mean, your bloodlust has to have been satisfied by now with as much destruction as you've caused. And that you will continue to cause from the injuries and the diseases and malnutrition. Like, don't worry. If you want bloodlust, you can just sit back and watch these people die slowly. All right? If all you want is bloodlust, just sit there and watch them die slowly from what you've already done. The infrastructure you've destroyed, their economy's destroyed, mentally probably destroyed, right? What view of the future can they possibly have? The malnutrition's going to set in, the diseases, things like that, no medical supplies, no work. They're just being crushed. They're being absolutely destroyed. So if all Israel wanted was vengeance, that's already done. If that doesn't cure your bloodlust, then your soul is darker than I think.
Of course. And do we know how these people are being moved? I mean, what about the hospitals? I mean, the hospitals are absolutely jam-packed with patients at the moment.
Yeah, they are.
Have you heard about their evacuation?
Yeah, one of our partners, by the way, it's one of the hospitals. It's from our partner. They have been told yesterday to evacuate the hospital. They didn't do it. Today they received another alert. They didn't evacuate. They are still treating the patients. But yeah, that's super worrying because that's violating the international law.
Right. And do you have any idea of what the reality for 2 million people pushed into the south of the Gaza Strip? Eventually, if they get there, what will that look like? No food, no water, no electricity.
Exactly.
Desperate, I would say. Yeah, desperate and panic, because they don't know what to do, what will happen. Yeah, they don't have water, they don't have food, they don't have anything in there. And the south, it's worth to mention that it has been already, yeah.
And this is 100% preventable by Israel. You can argue that Hamas initially caused it, but it was Israel's choice to respond like this. And it's Israel's choice today, the 14th, right? It's Israel's choice, October 14th. They could stop this right now. They could stop all the bombing, get to the negotiating table, of which I'm sure Hamas would be interested considering what's already happened. They could stop it if they wanted to. They don't want to stop it. They have vengeance in their heart. Vengeance, right? Wrath. All they want to do is kill people at this point and destroy them. They want to mentally destroy them, to take away all hope. That isn't something that a God-fearing country does. Right? That's something a human would do. But that's not someone who's following God's commandments and has a covenant with God would do. You would never destroy people like this. These types of things only happen here.
All right, listen, thank you very much indeed for coming. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Gemma Gesselster. Joining me live now from Tel Aviv is Eylon Levy, an Israeli government spokesman. Mr. Levy, thank you very much for coming on the program. I gather you just had to run to the shelter to
It'll be interesting to
area.
see how they can justify this.
I'm sorry, I have audio interference in my ear. I have another feed. I can't hear the question.
Oh, okay, all right, we'll try and sort that out. I'm very sorry. Can you hear me now? 1, 2, 3, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Mr. Levy?
They can't hear.
Okay, all right. We'll try and get back to you later, Mr. Levy. I'm sorry about that. We'll try and sort it out. Let's go to Alex in London. Alex.
Yeah, we hope to join that one later on. Here, tens of thousands of people have been protesting across the country, demanding an end to Israel's military action in Gaza. Demonstrators chanted pro-Palestinian slogans and heard calls from world leaders to condemn what is happening in the Strip.
How could you not condemn it? Regardless of whatever your position was on Palestine and Israel before and the two-state solution, which how do they not have a state? That doesn't make any sense. But regardless of all that, how can you possibly justify Israel's position? The only justification you'll have is that a terrorist organization attacked them, which is true. It's true. So what? Your justification is that because they acted like terrorists, you're going to act like a bigger terrorist? That's your response? Right? Well, these heinous, evil, nefarious people attacked me and they came in here and they killed these people. So I'm going to justify my actions. I'm going to claim moral high ground by being a bigger terrorist and destroying your entire group of folks. I'm going to genocide everybody because I let people get into my country and attack me and my pride is hurt. So I'm going to destroy everyone, devote everyone to destruction. Israel has zero moral high ground in this situation. None. except for the Israelis that don't agree with this and they don't have enough power to stop it. But anyone who is okay with what Israel is doing, you are pro-genocide. That's the position you're on. You should get a t-shirt. I'm Israeli and I'm pro-genocide because I'm upset.
Issued warnings ahead of the protest that anybody showing support for Hamas would be arrested. Rio Chatterjee was at the march in central London.
Stop bombing Gaza!
If death toll measures the violence of conflict,
Free!
perhaps protest measures its resonance.
Wow, it's massive.
This is London. This is Kolkata in India.
I think Yemen had some big ones too.
Dusseldorf in Germany.
This isn't going to stop. The whole world is watching you genocide people. It's no different than Russia. Right? They're on par. Putin and Bibi are doing the same thing. They're trying to genocide people. Varying reasons, but it doesn't matter. You're trying to destroy, devote to destruction an entire group of people. They're doing the same exact thing.
And Tel Aviv in Israel. It's hard to put an exact figure on the turnout here in London.
These will only get bigger.
Chanting thundered from start to finish. The protest was organised by the group Palestine Solidarity Campaign.
Israel's told us it's now at war with the Palestinian people because of what happened last Saturday, but the reality is...
The Palestinian people aren't the ones that did that. Hamas did that. That small group of Hamas, those radical terrorists, Islamic terrorists, I might add. That's who did it. It wasn't the Palestinian people. Right? I live on a neighborhood. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I could have some crazy neighbors down the street, right, doing some heinous evil acts. Right? I could have Islamic terrorists or any religious group for that matter, right, living outside of their covenant with God, outside of God's commandments, doing heinous acts. That doesn't mean that you can get upset and you can come drop bombs and blow my entire neighborhood up and kill me. Just because I happen to live next to people that don't act right, that don't care about God's commandments. They don't care about living in a covenant with God. And they're not worried about their eternal soul, which is absolutely at risk by the way they operate, because they're in a world created by God, right? You're in that world and you have commandments from God and you still don't follow them. And you think that there are going to be no consequences for your actions, even though you're being told there absolutely will be. But you still go your own way. It's insanity. It's insanity. And you can't even have compassion for people. It's hard to have compassion because they know what they should be doing. They've been told what to do. They know who created the system, the universe, everything in it. And you still don't listen. It's insanity. It's sin. Right? Sin has a very strange way of just weaving around your soul until all the light in your soul, you can't see it. It's blocked. Because the sin creates this canopy over your soul, and that light is just locked in. And that light doesn't get out. And because of that, you're not going to make it up that very narrow road to heaven. You'll be here. In varying conditions, depending on your life and what you've done.
Israel's been waging a war against the Palestinian people for decades through a process of an enactment of a military occupation and the imposition of a system of apartheid.
Amidst the crowd, signs aplenty that this is not as cut and dry an issue as many might perceive. And even on that point, not everyone agreed.
Do you think that...
I mean, how did they not already have a two-state solution by now? You've seen the map, right? You've seen the infographic. I'm not going to take it back any further. This is early 1900s. This is good enough. You can see how things started off, right? Palestine. And you can see, at least by 2014, what it looked like. And you can imagine what it's going to look like after Israel gets done bombing Gaza off the map and keeping them locked in that open-air prison as all the diseases set in and the malnutrition. So you can imagine what this map will look like if they get their way.
There is a disconnect between the complex politics of this issue and the humanitarian kind of situation on the ground, the loss of lives, the terror that people are feeling on both sides.
I reject that it's complicated. It's not Jew versus Arab. It's human rights against oppressors.
Though there was overall unity.
Yeah. It's leaders acting like terrorists. Leaders, kings, right? This is the problem with kings. Because with kings, you get a very big ego and a lot of pride. And when kings get upset with other kings, they send in their troops to destroy everyone and to make a point, right? To teach them a lesson based on vengeance. That's not justice. That's vengeance. That's when you add in anger and wrath. That's very different than justice. God handles justice. Human beings, especially kings, right? This is what they do. They go in and they genocide people because their pride and they're angry and their vengeance, right? And their wrath. They want to get even. They want an eye for an eye, right? They want to make you pay. It's very dark.
In today's messaging, there was nuance to people's motivations for coming.
And this is your daughter?
Yeah.
So it's important for you to come out and be here together?
Yeah, I think this is the minimum we can just do for the people there. We can't do any more thing.
Because I'm Irish and I can't stand what's happening to Palestine, to Palestinians right now. It's absolutely disgusting.
It is.
Honestly, I'm outraged. I'm just sick of it. Just people need to see this. It's not. I brought my children here. They're learning right from wrong right now.
I come from a marginalised community myself, and so where I see oppression happening, I don't think it's fair.
We
of course it's not fair.
The death of all civilians. It doesn't matter who they are, because we believe in the...
It's more than just civilians. It's all people too. I mean, military people, even though they're in the military, they're still humans, right? They're still God's creations. We mourn them all, the innocent people who are killed. But unfortunately, the military folks are in a different position because they're basically forced to follow the orders of their human kings and queens. So it's different, and they signed up to fight, and, you know, this place is filled to the brim with evil and sin. So unfortunately, as it stands right now, you need a military because you'll have absolute maniacs that have control of these countries and these military systems that can just come in and wipe you out. And they will, right? Because humans are all about war spoils. Why do you think people go to war? You know, why do you think Russia wants to get into the Ukraine? Because you want the land, you want the resources, you want access to the waterways and everything else that's inclusive in that land area. You want land, because land is power, because it'll give you access to resources and it'll pump your pride up, make you feel better. So it's very dangerous when we human beings get power, especially when you elevate that to the level of a king. And then you give a king a military, king or queen. Give a king or queen a military, and you add in a lot of pride and a lot of greed and a lot of, you know, power brokering between friends and acquaintances. I don't even know if they have friends at that level. You just have people that you have dirt on, people that owe you favors. It's a very disgusting system set up by human beings, which are full of sin. And then you give them a lot of power on top of it, and they get to reign here. Or at least they did, you know, before. Things are going to be a lot different going forward. But up until this point, they've had free reign to pretty much do, you know, whatever they wanted with the power they have, which just, their pride just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and their ego, and it's just, they create this class system where it's the folks at the top, like the 1% leaders, the very, very rich people, against the people that they happen to care about, right? That tiny little triangle at the top, and then basically all the peasants below, like us. So it's a very disgusting system.
Every human being, and that every human being should be able to live in freedom. Yep.
Whilst a lot of the people that we've spoken to today have professed the importance of empathy for all, recent hate crime data represents a different reality. The Metropolitan Police says that in the last 2 weeks, incidents of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia have drastically increased compared to the same 2 weeks last year.
Well, what do you expect? It's unfair to judge an entire group of people based on what a few people in the leadership structure in the military that has to follow their orders. It's unfair. So you can't demonize an entire group of people just by what, right? Bibi and his leadership team in the military that has to follow his orders, or at least, per the laws of their country they are. I mean, the laws of God are way different. And those are the ones that actually matter once their bodies perish, not whatever Bibi's telling them to do. But you can't judge an entire group of people by what a few people are doing. That's exactly what Israel's doing to the folks in Gaza, right? The Palestinians. Because you had a few horrible terrorists commit atrocious acts against Israelis, right? Because of that, what they've done is Israel has demonized all of the Palestinian people. All the folks in Gaza, they put them in a bucket, that 2.2 million people, whatever it is. You're taking those 2.2 million people and you're saying that they're all just as bad as the 1,500 or 2,000, however many folks were involved in that operation. You're judging the entire group of people based on what a few thousand of those horrible individuals did with their free will. You can't do that. You can never do that with any group. So it's wrong no matter what, right? So you can't demonize all Jewish people because of what Bibi and his leadership structure and his military team, right? You can't base all the Jewish people on what they're deciding to do. Now, what percentage of Jewish people agree with this genocide, right? What percentage of Jewish people are okay with genocide? I don't know. You'd have to run a poll on that and see. I'm sure they have pollsters out there that can figure that out. Are you Jewish and are you pro-genocide? Check here. They'll have to figure that out. But you can't be against all Jewish people just because of what the current Israeli leadership has decided to do and what the military structure under that king is legally obligated to do per the laws of that country. Now, the laws of God govern everything, and they're way over the laws of your kings and queens and whatever laws they want to put in place for this place, right? God is over everything. Your little king or queen is down here making laws, right? So you cannot demonize Jewish people or Israeli people based off of what the current political leadership has decided to do, which is to genocide people, Palestinians in Gaza. So it's never fair to do. You have to judge people individually, right? Just because I'm from Jacksonville, I'm not responsible for whatever the governor decides to do in Jacksonville. I can vote, and it's a democracy, and people will get in power and they'll make decisions, and the law is based here. There's certain things they can and can't do, but it doesn't mean that I'm guilty of whatever the governor does, right? Just because I happen to live here.
By the time the protest reached Downing Street, the police presence was greater. One protester was removed for wearing a mask and immediately released. A power is in place which requires a...
One thing that is nice, though, as far as the protest, I think they asked Palestinians to rise up or certain folks to rise up, like a day of rage, and I didn't see that. From all the news articles I saw, it looked like everyone was peaceful. Everyone was out there. They had their signs. They were making their voices heard. All right, freedom of speech. They were allowed to present whatever their position was. I didn't see any cars getting turned over. I didn't see any arson. I didn't see anyone getting shot. Maybe small instances happened and I missed the news, but I didn't see. All I saw was people expressing their concern about a country that is genociding people, that is devoting to destruction an entire group of people. So it was nice to see that folks were out there protesting peacefully and not setting their cities on fire. So that was nice to see.
To remove items which conceals their identity. And whilst the majority of protesters sent a message to the UK government, a minority at Trafalgar Square threw flares and sticks at the police. Next weekend, we understand, there are plans for an even bigger protest, by which
it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. Just like Putin is destroying Russia, Bibi is destroying Israel. Israel will never be able to get this stain off of their country. Everyone's going to remember the time that Israel was attacked and they decided to take their army which is technologically not even comparable to the army in Gaza or the Palestinians, and destroyed the entire place. And just wait till you see those final tallies, right? Those final tallies when they're like, oh, over this war that they authorized, they ended up killing, I don't know, 20,000 civilians and, 5,000 children. You'll see it. When this is all done, you'll see that big list of all the war, basically war crimes that happened. And that stain is always going to be on Israel. People will always be talking about this. And you can't call it a war. It's an extermination. Look at the military prowess that Israel has. Look at the assets. I want someone like a military expert, someone in the news, someone do it. I want you to put up a nice chart and show like militarily what assets Israel has, and then compare those over to what the folks in Gaza have. Literally, I want you to do it. Do a comparison. All the military hardware, the amount of expenditures and money and everything they have, all the cool technology, the technology of destruction, just list all that down. The tanks and the artillery and all the drones and the aircraft, all that. And I want you to put it next to Gaza, right? The Palestinian, or Hamas. Hamas, we'll just deal with the terrorists, right? So put it next to Hamas, and I want you to put all the military hardware that they have, and then put that next to Israel. And then I want you to tell me that somehow that's a war. It's not. It's an extermination. If they're lucky, they'll get pushed out, right? And it'll be a refugee crisis for Egypt and other countries in the region. It's not a war. And the stain that Bibi and his political leadership team is putting on Israel is not going to disappear for a very long time. People will always be talking about this war. And it's not a war. They'll always be talking about this extermination of Gaza. And then they're going to go back and they're going to show these maps where it used to be Palestine. And then somehow the British folks decided that they would, facilitate a bunch of immigration here. And then by 2014, the Arabs basically had almost no control. They lived in certain areas that they were allowed to live under control there, right? And then what's this infographic? What's this going to look like in 2 years? So this stain will forever be on Israel, because eventually you're going to get that tally count. You'll have the tally count of the terrorists over here and all the damage they did to Israel, which has already stopped, right? They have no way to get out now and do anything else. So you'll have that tally. And then you're going to have this ginormous tally of deaths and dismemberments and diseases and malnutrition and killed children and killed pregnant people and killed elderly people. You're going to have that huge list, that huge tally, and all that's going to be on Israel. So they will always be remembered by the genocide that started in 2023. And people can argue it started before. That's fine. I'm just judging it on this one incident, right? The terrorist attack and the Israeli response. So we're just looking at that right now just to keep it simple.
Will be higher too.
Ria Chatterjee reporting. Well, joining me live now, I hope, from Tel Aviv is Eylon Levy, an Israeli government spokesman. Welcome to the program, Mr. Levy. I'm glad we've sorted out the technical issues. The people that we've spoken to, including those in the Israeli army, including at the moment, actually, waiting to go into Gaza in this very, difficult moment, are so critical of your boss, Prime Minister Netanyahu, are so critical of the intelligence and security failures that led to the atrocious attacks a week ago. What can you say to them to reassure them as they march into the Gaza Strip?
You are right to speak of the absolutely atrocious massacre that took place last week. I think it...
And is taking place every day under your government, sir. It was an atrocious, wicked act that happened. That's true. And what you're doing every day is just as bad. So don't sit back there on your moral high horse thinking that you're better than the terrorists that attacked you. Your entire country is acting like a gigantic terrorist every single day. And when I'm done making this video and uploading it, I'll turn my television back on and I'll watch you bomb more children and civilians and people that had nothing to do with that terrorist attack. So don't sit back there and act like you're any better than the terrorists that attacked you, because you're acting just like them. All right? We're going back to the Old Testament on this one. This is Old Testament justice. Vengeance.
Rather difficult to understand from the report we just saw of the enormous protests on the streets of London supporting Hamas that Israel suffered the single...
I think they were supporting Gaza. I'm sure there are some people crazy enough to support Hamas, a terrorist. No. The signs that I saw were support for Palestine, support for Gaza. That's the kind of support I would give. I'm not supporting a terrorist organization, especially an Islamic terrorist organization, a false religion created by a false prophet. I have no interest in that. But I can support civilians, people in general, and not even civilians, just people that are innocent of that crime being bombed out of existence, being starved to death, having no water, having no medical supplies, right? Having no hope. They do have hope. Hopefully, Israel will come to its senses and stop the genocide that they've already started. But as it stands right now, as they're sitting around smelling all the dead bodies and the flies are all around and all they can hear are planes flying over and drones and bombs dropping and nothing but bad news coming in, while they're sitting in the dark because there's no electricity, it probably feels hopeless at the moment. So hopefully Israel will stop what it's doing. So this gentleman here defending his country that's committing genocide, that must be a very tough job.
Massacre of Jews since the Holocaust last week.
What about the Holocaust you're creating? Right? The numbers are very different. I get that. But the act is the same. You're murdering people. You're killing people. You're starving people. How is it different? The body count is different, but how you're treating them? You're killing them. You're murdering them. You're burning them. You're going to kill them with diseases, malnutrition. They're going to be refugees. You have no moral high ground. Just because of very atrocious acts that happen to your people, it doesn't give you the right to act just like that to someone else.
World's worst terror attack in world history after only 9/11. Israel is a country that is still in shock. It's a country that is grieving, mourning, and it's a country that has come together in an extraordinary way to help to support this effort.
You've come together to support genocide. You've come together to kill innocent men, women, and children, elderly people, people that are pregnant, people that are disabled, people that can't move around. That's what you came together to support.
Sure that we bring our captives home, make sure that we end Hamas so it can no longer carry out.
What is it going to matter if you end Hamas? What does it matter? Every other Islamic terrorist organization in that region is seeing what you're doing to other Muslims. So per their incorrect religion, they're going to want to kill you anyway, right? They may have already wanted to kill you because, you know, their religion, it's absolutely wrong and it's ridiculous. But if they didn't already want to kill you, you don't think they're going to really want to kill you now, seeing how you're treating the Palestinians? So you might be getting rid of Hamas, but you're creating something even worse. Because those religions aren't going to follow God's advice either. You aren't following God's commandments not to murder, and neither are they. So you might get rid of Hamas, but all you're going to do is point a whole bunch of other daggers right at Israel. And it's your fault because you're not listening. Stop killing innocent people. You're not getting rid of terrorists. You're creating more. You might kill one terrorist. You're going to create 10 or 20 more because they're going to turn on their TV every single day and watch you murder people over and over and over. And they're going to see the children starving to death. And they're going to see people getting pulled out of the rubble, right? Muslims. They're going to see Muslims getting pulled out of the rubble. And they're going to see them, right? Starving to death. They're going to be refugees. They're going to see all the horrible things you've done. And you're going to have people that want to kill you, probably for the rest of their lives, because they're going to be scarred from what they've seen. Think of the people, the refugees that come out of Gaza, right? If they don't follow God's directions and they have that wrath in their heart, they would probably want to hurt you after what you've done to them, if I had to guess. But hopefully everyone listens to God's commandments and understands that you're not getting to the promised land. You're not getting to heaven with wrath and vengeance and rage. It's not going to happen. No way.
Atrocities. Again, There will be a time for learning lessons. Israel is already learning lessons, and
Israel will learn a very hard lesson from how the world views them after this. After watching them destroy innocent people day after day after day, Bibi's going to look no better than Putin. So this lesson is going to be a stain on Israel for a very, very long time.
That, as we've done many times in the past, after the war, after we've picked up all the pieces, we will understand exactly what went wrong and how to move forward. But for now, the country is focusing on one thing: victory in this war.
It's not victory, it's vengeance. It's not victory. Trust me, you're not going to be victorious from this. Everyone's going to see exactly what Israel is made of, at least based on the current leadership and the military structure under that leadership that is following the orders of the king that you have currently.
A war forced on us, a force we will win, so that Hamas can never again perpetrate such atrocities.
It doesn't matter. You can get a terrorist Islamic organization a different name. You might kill Hamas. All you're doing is firing up every other Islamic terrorist in your area, in your neighborhood. And guess where they're going? Guess what the number one target's going to be now?
Right. But the soldiers that we've spoken to, Israeli soldiers, reservists, are also saying to us very clearly that they wouldn't be in this position. They wouldn't have to risk their lives if the government had done its job properly.
Well, that's true.
You're right. There is a lot of anger in the country at the failures that led to the atrocities.
Right. So your political leadership, not only did they let this happen, they let this atrocity happen to the Israeli people, they're also going to be responsible for the stain that it puts on Israel. They're responsible for defiling their country in front of the world by their response that the entire world is watching. The world is going to watch Israel genocide these folks in Gaza. And then it's going to bring up all the historical issues that they've had with the Palestinians and the two-state solution. All of this because of how Israel responded. So first off, from an Israeli standpoint, I would guess that they're going to be very upset with their king because of what they allowed to happen. Right? The moat wasn't very good. The moat was ineffective. The bandits got in and they attacked you. And now the world's going to watch Israel defile itself in front of the entire world by genociding these folks because they're angry and they want vengeance.
Of last week, the Israeli National Security Advisor went on television just an hour ago and said, yes, the state did not step up to the plate. There were failures and we're going to learn the lessons. But the time for learning lessons will come. At the moment, Israel is still fighting to repel the attack from Hamas, a terrorist organization that fired rockets at us just as we...
Of which your Iron Dome system gets, what, 85, 90% of? Probably. This is not a war. Right? Gaza doesn't pose any major threat to Israel, especially technologically and with all the military assets you have. This is going to be an extermination.
About to go on air, forcing us to evacuate the studio. This is a terrorist organization that still holds over 120 Israelis, from babies only a few months old to women over the age of...
Right, that's horrific. And they should give those people back today. They should have never taken them. They should have never slaughtered those people. God has seen everything that we have done through every moment of our life. And it's not even things that we've done. It's things that we're thinking. It's our motivations. Even on things that we haven't committed. Those motivations are in us because we're filled with sin. So everything is known. God knows everything we're thinking, everything we've done, all the motivations for those actions, things that we wanted to do that we didn't. God knows all of it. And, you know, our eternity is based on how we act and how we think and how we live in our covenant with God based on God's commandments. Neither of these groups listens to God. Neither of them. The terrorists obviously didn't listen. They committed atrocities. Israel is committing atrocities against that group, which is just going to get some other Islamic group to commit atrocities against Israel. It never ends. It's a revolving cycle that keeps the war machine going. The military, industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. It will keep that going because the hamster's always going to be running on that wheel, right? You're always going to be at war because no one's able to get that wrath and that bloodlust, right? They want to get even. They want to fight back. They want to get even. They want to make someone pay. And because of that, you get into a tit for tat, and you just keep going back, and it never ends. So the terrorists, Hamas, should give back those citizens 100%. They should beg forgiveness from God for all the things they've done wrong in their life, not just this, probably many other things. And they should try to offset that with good acts, with goodwill, with good service to others the rest of their life, and pray for forgiveness. That's all they can do. And Israel should do the same. But unfortunately, they're both acting like terrorists, and all they're doing is going to create more terrorists. So they'll always be at war. They'll always need more military technological enhancements, because people are always going to want to kill them, because it's just going to be this tit for tat, back and forth, and it will never end. You'll always be in a cycle of war. When you want to get even with people, when you can't, I know forgiveness is too much to ask at this point, but when you can't negotiate with people and eventually forgive them, you'll always be at war. It'll never stop, which is how it's always been for humans throughout history. We have always been at war. We have never figured out how to not be at war. But that's something we will have to figure out.
In captivity, we do not know their condition. We want them back. We want them back immediately. We want them back unconditionally, and we're determined to make this a war that will end Hamas's military presence in the Gaza Strip, so that it can never perpetrate such crimes against humanity ever again.
Right.
Crimes against humanity? What is Israel doing? How is Israel any better than those terrorists? Like I said, when this is all said and done, when you stack up that list of everyone that Israel's killed next to the list of what the terrorists from Hamas did, you'll see what the tally will be. And you can add up all the children, like get a nice little chart set up, right? How many innocent civilians, how many elderly people, how many disabled people, how many impoverished people, how many children, pregnant folks, whatever, all of it. You can add it up and you can see what each terroristic side, what they accomplished in their war, right? They wanted to kill. Essentially, that's what's happening here, is you have two parties and they're both willing to kill. They're both willing to murder. Why? Because they don't listen to God. That's why.
No one sensible questions the right of the state of Israel to defend itself. But people are questioning, including in this country, whether Israel has the right to break international humanitarian law as it bombs civilians in the Gaza Strip and is about to march in.
Yep.
I'll answer that loaded question. Israel has a right, not only a right, but a duty to defend itself against this atrocity. That's a right and a duty that's been recognized by the international community. And it's a right and a duty that, as President Biden said this week, if the United States faced a similar atrocity, it would respond in a way that is swift, decisive, and overwhelming.
And Biden and the military group under him that agreed to those orders would be committing the same sins in God's eyes. Because you're responsible. I don't care about what your human boss tells you, your human king or queen. You're responsible for every little click that you hit that sends every bomb or missile off the rail, or every artillery unit, every tank, all of it. You answer to God at the end of the day. Biden's not going to be able to help you after you die. Bibi's not going to be able to help you. Putin's not going to be able to help you. The only one that can help your soul along your eternal journey after you die is God. That's it. So who do you think you should be listening to? Who wants to guide you as a Heavenly Father, giving you advice to make sure your eternal journey is amazing? Because trust me, Biden's not going to be able to help you. Bibi won't be able to help you. Putin won't be able to help you. Nobody. No human can help you once your soul comes out of your body. And where you go is going to be based on what you're doing here. The actions you're taking here, and what's in your heart and your relationship with God, and whether or not you listen to God's commandments, which a lot of us do not. Hey, get down! Which a lot of us do not.
Is exactly how Israel is responding, in a way that is swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We are doing what we can to minimize civilian casualties on the other side.
How can you even say that? Minimize casualties? They've already given the list. You're not minimizing any casualties. You're blowing them up, so how can you possibly say that? But I think when you support governments, you basically have to be a professional liar. You have to be someone who can go out there and, like, you know, you're given your marching orders and you have to go out there and you have to give them with a straight face and seem like you're telling the truth. And in the back of your mind, you know it's actually not the truth. Hey.
That is why Israel...
If they wanted to minimize innocent civilians or casualties in general, you wouldn't be dropping bombs off of a plane thousands of feet in the sky and blowing up civilian infrastructure. Because there's no way to do that without having collateral damage. And I've already explained to you, God has a zero tolerance policy for collateral damage. Right? Someone's running at you with a gun or a knife, something like that, right? You're in immediate danger. You're allowed to defend yourself. That's true, because people here are loaded to the ears with sin. They're full of sin. And there's very horrible people here using their free will for very bad things. And there will be penalties for that they will pay, but that's for God to decide. So yes, you're allowed to defend yourself. This is not defense. This is genocide at this point.
Asking residents of northern Gaza to get out of the combat zones. By the way, the Israeli...
And go where? You know how tightly packed that place is? And there's no there's no exit options right now. They're packed in there. Where are they supposed to go? They were in an area confined for like 2.2 million people, right? They were spaced out to make that work as best they could in that confined space. And now you're crushing them all into southern Gaza. So where are they supposed to go? You won't let them out. You've got them in a barrel and you're dropping grenades in the barrel. Where are they supposed to go?
Just in the last hour released photographic evidence showing that Hamas has set up roadblocks along the main streets in the Gaza Strip to stop Gazan civilians from evacuating. Israel is doing...
Because they're heinous people too. They're just like you. Right? They're willing to murder innocent people just like Israel is. So they might be preventing civilians from getting out so that they might get blown up. They're horrible people if they're doing that. And trust me, when they die, that's between them and God. But God is just. You get good results and you get bad results. And that's based on how you operate here. Because you're never going to make it home if you're acting like this world. That road is really narrow. And you need to understand that. And both of these parties are nowhere close.
Everything it can so that the civilians of Gaza will live, while Hamas is doing everything it can to make sure they die and martyr themselves for the perverse cause of jihad.
Okay.
Both sides are wrong. Neither side has moral high ground. Neither side is doing what's correct in God's eyes, based on God's commandments, which apparently the folks in Israel have forgotten.
We've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming on the program, Elon Levy.
Thank you very much for having me here.
So that's it. This one ran long. Sorry about that. But that's basically where we are with this. They call it a war. It's more like an extermination at this point. So it's extremely sad. So let's pray that God puts wisdom into these folks, which apparently they don't have any. Because you have a terrorist organization that was willing to commit these heinous crimes against Israelis and the people that were visiting. All right? And then you have an Israeli government that is okay absolutely destroying innocent people, being just as evil as the terrorists because they're angry and they want vengeance. They're full of wrath and they're willing to murder. They're willing to violate God's commandments because of their pride and their ego and their need for revenge. This is why revenge never works. Never works. You'll just stay on that little wheel of war. You'll be on there forever. You'll never get off because it'll be a tit for tat. They'll do something. You'll one-up them. They'll want to one-up you. It never ends. You'll just keep going because you're willing to kill each other. When we finally learn to love each other, all of us, right? and love God's creations. We'll love the planet, live in harmony with the planet. We'll love each other. We'll love the animals. We'll care that our souls are going to eventually get to heaven, right? You think that's ever going to happen when we operate like this? You need to stop living like this world. You need to live like you're going to the top floor. But to get there, you'll have to already act like it. And this is not good enough because we don't listen. We don't follow God's commandments. We don't love others, all others, right? Love God and love all others. We don't love others. You can't love somebody when you're dropping a bomb to blow them up, or you're cutting their head off, or you're stabbing them, or you're choking them to death, or you're setting them on fire, or you're melting them in acid, right? That's not love. Those are heinous, wicked acts, and those are things that we do as human beings, which is why our bodies perish. Hopefully along our journey we'll eventually figure it out, but apparently some people have not. So let's just pray that God puts wisdom into both parties. Hamas, the terrorists, the leaders from both parties, that they'll stop the violence. Because if you continue to retaliate in vengeance, you'll never get off the wheel. You'll be on a wheel of war forever. You'll constantly have to kill people. You will constantly have to violate God's commandments because you can't stop the violence and negotiate. Or if you have to, go in and just get them out from the terrorists themselves. But you cannot devote an entire group of people to destruction. And I would think that Jewish people would understand that given their history. But apparently they don't.